These are 20 car features that promise easier driving, but create more problems than they solve. And by the end, you'll know exactly which ones deserve to be shut off immediately. Most drivers struggle not because they lack skill, but because their own vehicle interferes more than it assists. Modern cars arrive packed with features making decisions without context, warning when they shouldn't, and creating distraction, unnecessary wear, or false security instead of improving anything. This isn't about rejecting all technology or claiming the past was superior. This is about identifying which modern features add nothing to daily driving and which ones perform better when deactivated. Some features work flawlessly from a technical standpoint, yet remain terrible ideas in practice, and some systems are so intelligent they end up making the driver the least reliable part of the equation. We start with features that seem minor but cause more daily frustration than most people acknowledge. Number 20. Automatic headlights on secondary roads. Automatic headlight systems use ambient light sensors and reflection detection to switch between high and low beams, and the technology handles simple environments reasonably well, but on secondary roads it becomes a liability. These systems react to ambient light and specific reflections rather than the actual layout of the road ahead. On poorly lit roads with curves, elevation changes, reflective signs, or variable weather conditions, the system hesitates constantly, sometimes switching to low beams when you need high beams. Other times keeping high beams on too long right when another car appears around a curve. That erratic behavior isn't just annoying, it can leave you without proper lighting exactly when you need it most. And the bigger problem is that drivers stop anticipating what the road requires because they trust the car will decide better than them. When the system fails, it does so without warning and without giving you time to react, and on secondary roads where visibility determines everything, that second of hesitation genuinely matters. Manual control of the lights remains more reliable on these types of roads, not from nostalgia, but because sensors don't understand complex environments the way human judgment does. Number 19. Daytime running lights when stationary. Daytime running lights serve a clear function when the car is moving. They improve visibility to other vehicles on the road. But the problem appears when they stay on while the car sits motionless for extended periods during traffic jams, long red lights, or prolonged stops. These lights continue consuming energy without providing any real benefit. They don't increase safety when you're not moving. They don't improve visibility, and they accomplish nothing except adding a constant load to the electrical system. Modern vehicles don't use simple bulbs for these lights. They use complete modules with associated electronics, and that wear accumulates silently over time and eventually affects components that cost serious money to replace. This is a feature designed to comply with regulations rather than optimize real-world use. And if your system allows you to turn off daytime running lights when stationary, doing so doesn't reduce safety and does eliminate unnecessary electrical stress. Number 18. Blind spot monitor with dirty sensors. The blind spot monitor is one of those features that performs excellently under ideal conditions and terribly in the real world because the system depends completely on external sensors, and the moment those sensors get dirty, accuracy plummets. Rain, mud, dust, winter road salt, or dirt accumulated after a long trip directly affect how well the system detects surrounding vehicles, and the car stops correctly identifying what's happening around it, but the driver still trusts the visual or audible signal that's supposed to appear. This creates the real risk, which is a false sense of security, because drivers stop checking their mirrors when they expect the car to warn them about approaching vehicles. When the system can't see anything because the sensors are covered in grime, it doesn't warn you at all, and many professionals agree that well-adjusted mirrors used consciously remain more reliable than any passive sensor. The monitor can serve as an additional aid, but it should never replace direct observation, and if you know you're driving in conditions where sensors routinely fail, turning the system off is actually safer than trusting it blindly. Number 17. Excessive TPMS warnings. Tire pressure monitoring was created as a safety tool, but in many modern cars it has transformed into a constant source of alerts without real importance, because temperature changes, small normal variations in pressure, or recent adjustments are enough to trigger repeated warnings. The problem isn't that the system exists, the problem is that it warns too frequently and without useful context. Drivers receive alerts that don't represent immediate danger, and over time they stop taking any of the warnings seriously, which produces the opposite effect of what the system intended. When a genuine alert finally appears, the driver has already learned to ignore it because the system cried wolf too many times. The system loses all credibility and becomes background noise. A useful tire pressure monitor complements manual checks rather than replacing driver judgment, and when the system triggers too easily, it generates unnecessary stress without improving actual safety. Number 16. Automatic proximity unlocking. Automatic proximity unlocking is comfortable, fast, and extremely vulnerable to theft, because this system lets you open the car without touching the key, but it also enables theft methods using signal amplification that don't require forcing locks or breaking anything. Thieves intercept and retransmit the key signal, and the car thinks the key is nearby when it's actually still in your pocket, 20 feet away, and the result is a vehicle opened without any signs of forced entry. It's also common for the system to activate accidentally, leaving the car unlocked without the driver noticing until much later, which is why more and more security experts now recommend deactivating this function when possible and returning to manual unlocking methods. It might feel like a step backward, but in terms of real protection, it's exactly the opposite, because the safest solution isn't always the most sophisticated one. Number 15. Automatic wipers with rain sensor. Automatic wipers promise something simple. You forget about adjusting wiper speed and let the car handle it for you. But in practice, they do exactly the opposite and make you think about wipers more than ever. The rain sensor doesn't actually measure rain. It measures light refraction on the windshield, which opens the door to some very creative interpretations of what's happening outside. Some days it's pouring rain and the system takes forever to react, while other days a few drops appear and the wipers enter hyperactive mode, sweeping an almost dry windshield. And that erratic operation isn't just annoying, it accelerates wiper blade wear because the blades are designed to work lubricated by water rather than dragging across dry glass. The problem multiplies after a car wash when wax residue, cleaning products, or poorly distributed moisture confuses the sensor for miles afterward, and you end up fighting with a system that was supposed to make life easier. Manually adjusting the wipers remains more precise, gentler on the components, and far less frustrating than letting an optical sensor interpret the weather for you. Number 14. Gesture controls. Gesture controls are a perfect example of technology created to impress people during product presentations rather than to be used every day, because the idea of raising the volume or changing songs by waving your hand in the air sounds futuristic until the unintended activations begin. A misunderstood gesture, a hand moving while you talk, or even a quick steering correction can activate functions you never meant to touch. Suddenly, the volume jumps, the radio station changes, or a menu opens without you being clear about what you did wrong. And the main problem isn't the error itself, it's the distraction it creates. You try to undo the action by moving your hand again, and the system responds with a completely different interpretation, and the result is more time looking at the screen and less attention on the road. Physical buttons and clear controls aren't outdated. They're precise, and they let you operate without looking and without ambiguity, because when a feature requires the car to guess what you want to do, it usually guesses wrong. Number 13. Seatbelt warning sound during maneuvers. The seatbelt warning sound serves an important function on the road, but it becomes completely exaggerated during low-speed maneuvers because in garages, parking lots, narrow entrances, or movements of just a few meters, the car starts beeping as if you're committing a serious crime. Many systems don't distinguish well between a seated person and a heavy object on the seat, so a bag, a box, or even a jacket can activate the sensor and generate constant alarms that make no sense. In that context, instead of concentrating on the maneuver, the driver feels rushed by the beeping and speeds up processes that should be done calmly and precisely, which increases the risk of minor bumps, scrapes, or unnecessary errors. The warning makes complete sense during normal driving, but in controlled low-speed maneuvers, it becomes useless noise, and turning it off in those situations isn't irresponsible. It's adapting the function to how the car is actually being used. Number 12. Artificial engine sound. Artificial engine sound tries to solve a problem that never existed, that modern cars are too quiet, and to compensate, many manufacturers play fake sounds through the speakers, simulating an engine that isn't actually making that noise. The result is a total disconnect between what the car does and what you hear. You accelerate lightly and it sounds aggressive, or you accelerate hard and the sound doesn't match the actual response. That lack of coherence affects your perception of speed, effort, and engine RPM, and on long trips, the constant fake sound becomes genuinely tiring because it's not real mechanical noise. It's a repetitive audio track that your brain can't completely ignore. Listening to the real engine provides useful information about when it's working hard, when it's comfortable, and when it's time to ease off. But artificial sound eliminates that reference and replaces it with an illusion that doesn't help you drive better. Number 11. Excessive interior ambient lighting. Interior ambient lighting can create a pleasant atmosphere when the car is parked, but during night driving, if poorly adjusted, it creates serious problems because lights that are too intense or positioned incorrectly generate reflections on windows and interior surfaces that distract you constantly. The human eye needs to adapt to the darkness outside, and when the car's interior is too brightly lit, that adaptation is lost. Peripheral vision decreases and it becomes harder to detect details on the road, especially on poorly lit roads. Many systems prioritize aesthetics over functionality with flashy colors, dynamic changes, or animations that add nothing to driving and only introduce unnecessary visual stimuli. Discreet, well-regulated, and constant interior lighting is safer than any light show. Because the car isn't a nightclub, it's an environment where your attention should remain focused outside rather than inside. If you want to learn to use your car's technology in your favor instead of against you, subscribe here. Because we don't activate features out of habit, we explain which ones deserve to be on and which ones don't. Now we move into features that don't just cause discomfort, but actually accelerate mechanical wear and directly affect the lifespan of your car. Number 10. Automatic air conditioning. Automatic air conditioning is one of those features many people turn on the first day and never touch again, and the promise is simple. You choose a temperature and the car handles the rest, but the problem is how it accomplishes this. To maintain that ideal temperature, the system enters constant cycles of activating and deactivating the compressor even when it's not strictly necessary. That continuous work isn't free, it creates more load on the engine, increases fuel consumption, and over time causes premature wear of the compressor itself, which is an expensive component. The sensors used by many automatic systems aren't always accurate either, because all it takes is direct sunlight on one area of the cabin or a partially blocked vent for the car to think it's hotter than it really is and force the system to work unnecessarily. The result is a cabin that cycles from cold to hot in unnatural patterns, forcing the system to work overtime, correcting itself, and using climate control in manual mode doesn't mean giving up comfort. It means giving the system clear and stable commands, reducing unnecessary cycles, and extending the life of expensive parts. Sometimes the truly intelligent mode is the one you control yourself. Number 9. Cylinder deactivation. Cylinder deactivation is a feature designed to reduce fuel consumption in low-load situations by shutting off part of the engine when you don't need full power, and in theory it sounds brilliant. But in practice, it introduces a series of problems that many drivers never connect to this technology. Every time the system enters and exits active cylinder mode, the engine experiences internal thermal variations that aren't ideal for long-term durability. These transitions generate small changes in vibration and pressure that affect piston rings, bearings, and engine mounts. And in many models, owners start noticing higher than normal oil consumption as the miles add up, precisely because those variations affect internal sealing. It's no coincidence that some of the most criticized engines for oil consumption share this exact technology, and many mechanics aren't fans of cylinder deactivation, not because the concept is absurd, but because in real-world use it rarely operates under ideal conditions. Instead of a stable engine, you get one that constantly changes how it works, and turning it off might mean slightly higher fuel consumption, but it also provides more uniform and predictable operation. Number 8. Speed-dependent volume adjustment. Automatic volume adjustment based on speed aims to compensate for aerodynamic and road noise as the car accelerates. But the problem is that it rarely does this in a natural way because the system doesn't know if you're enjoying a quiet song, listening to a podcast, or following navigation instructions. It simply raises and lowers the volume based on predefined parameters that don't always match what you actually want. The result is constant changes that your brain perceives as interruptions, sudden increases when overtaking, sudden decreases when braking, adjustments that force you to touch the volume control more times than necessary. On long trips, that continuous variation generates auditory fatigue, even if you're not consciously aware of it at the moment. And this is a solution to a problem nobody asked to be solved. Adjusting the volume manually once and leaving it alone is usually more comfortable and less invasive, because music and sound should accompany your drive, not become one more thing you have to manage while driving. Number 7. Eco mode on the highway. Eco mode makes sense in calm urban environments, but on the highway it can become a genuine hindrance, because when you activate this mode, accelerator response becomes deliberately slow, the gearbox prioritizes higher gears, and the engine avoids any power delivery that isn't strictly minimal. That might be acceptable during steady cruising, but it becomes problematic in real situations. During overtaking, merging, or maneuvers that require immediate reaction, Eco mode introduces a delay that can surprise you, and you need deeper accelerator pedal presses to get the same response, which creates a feeling of lack of control exactly when you need the most clarity. The actual fuel savings on the highway are usually minimal, while the sacrifice in throttle response is obvious. And driving efficiently doesn't depend on a magic button, it depends on anticipation, smoothness, and judgment. In many cases, an attentive driver in normal mode consumes less fuel than another driver fighting against a poorly calibrated eco mode. Number 6. Automatic Parking Assistant. The automatic parking assistant is one of those features that impresses people in demonstrations but frustrates them in daily life, because the system needs time to detect the space, calculate the maneuver, and execute the parking. In real situations, that translates to slow maneuvers that block traffic and make you nervous along with everyone waiting behind you. These assistants depend on sensors that don't always interpret low curbs, shadows, dirt, or poorly painted lines correctly, and it's not uncommon for the car to get too close to the curb, force you to intervene, or simply cancel the maneuver halfway through. Instead of reducing stress, it increases stress. And parking is a basic skill that, when learned properly, is faster and more precise than any current automatic system. Completely delegating this task to the car not only fails to save time, it can also make you lose confidence in your own driving ability. Now we reach the features that go beyond annoying or inefficient and enter genuinely problematic territory, because the following functions can actually get you into real trouble when you least expect it. Number 5. Traction control on loose surfaces. Traction control is one of the most misunderstood driver aids because it works exceptionally well as long as you're on pavement in good condition. But the problem appears when you leave that ideal scenario and face sand, mud, snow, or gravel. On those surfaces, The system interprets any wheel slip as something negative and responds by cutting power or braking wheels exactly when you most need them to spin freely. In low-grip situations, a certain degree of wheel slip isn't just normal, it's necessary because the wheels need to dig into the surface, clean away the loose layer, and find grip underneath. When traction control intervenes aggressively, the car loses inertia and loses the ability to move forward. And this is the classic moment when you press the accelerator and the car simply doesn't move while the system mistakenly thinks it's helping you. Turning off traction control in these scenarios can make the difference between getting out on your own or sitting there stuck waiting for help. And this isn't about drifting uncontrollably, it's about allowing the mechanics to do what they physically need to do in light snow, dirt roads, or soft sand. In those conditions, this feature transforms from an ally into a serious obstacle. Number 4. Permanent Voice Assistant. The permanent voice assistant is one of those features many cars come with activated by default, something almost nobody explicitly requested, and the idea of talking to your car sounds futuristic, but in practice it usually causes more problems than it solves. The system is constantly listening, interprets words out of context, and sometimes reacts to normal conversations as if they were commands. Beyond the obvious distraction, there's an issue many drivers overlook, which is privacy. Because an assistant that is always listening means microphones that are permanently active with data that gets processed and in many cases sent to external servers. Even if the manufacturer promises security, the reality is that you are continuously giving up information for a function most people use twice and then completely forget about. And interpretation errors happen constantly, with unexpected music changes, calls activated by mistake, or system settings that change without you wanting them to. Instead of simplifying driving, it adds an extra layer of interference, and turning it off doesn't make you less modern. It gives you back control and reduces unnecessary distractions. Number 3. Automatic System Updates. Automatic system updates promise to improve the car over time, but they don't always keep that promise, because unlike a mobile phone, a car can't afford software failures that affect basic functions. Yet there are many documented cases where an update introduces new bugs, changes settings you had already adjusted, or alters the behavior of systems that previously worked correctly. Another major risk is the moment the update is performed, because some systems become temporarily unusable during the process, and if something goes wrong, the car can be locked out or have limited functions until it goes to a dealership. All of this for an update that in many cases doesn't provide relevant improvements for daily use. And managing updates manually allows you to inform yourself first, see if other users have experienced problems, and decide when and how to update. Not everything new is better, and in a vehicle, stability is usually more valuable than constant novelty. What many people don't realize is that many updates aren't designed to improve your current car. They're designed to standardize software across the manufacturer's entire range, which means sometimes future compatibility or reduction of the manufacturer's internal costs get prioritized over your actual user experience. Some updates modify assistance parameters, accelerator response, or battery management without you requesting it or even noticing it immediately, and the car keeps working, but it no longer behaves the same way. In a vehicle, those silent changes are more problematic than in any other technological device. Number 2. Excessively sensitive lane assist. Lane assist was created with good intentions, to avoid unintentional lane departures. But the problem appears when its sensitivity is set so high that it starts correcting your steering even when you're acting consciously and deliberately. On narrow roads, in construction zones with poorly painted lines, or on older road layouts, the system can interpret normal maneuvers as mistakes and apply unexpected corrections. These interventions can be genuinely dangerous because a small turn of the steering wheel that the system decides to counteract creates a feeling that you're fighting the car for control, and during overtaking, obstacle avoidance, or on secondary roads, those automatic corrections aren't just annoying, they can compromise safety, Turning off or minimizing this assistant returns a more natural and predictable driving experience because the car stops imposing decisions and goes back to responding only to your commands, and you're the one who actually sees and understands the complete situation. Another real problem is that this system creates a dangerous dependence, because some drivers, without realizing it, start to relax too much when the car corrects itself automatically. This reduces active attention and delays reaction time when the system fails or deactivates due to external conditions. And on roads with faded or temporary markings, the assistant can invent a lane that doesn't actually exist. Instead of being a passive aid, it becomes a direct influence on the trajectory, something that should rest exclusively with the driver. Number 1. Remote start in enclosed spaces. Remote start is without argument the most dangerous feature when used in enclosed spaces, because starting the car remotely inside a closed garage might seem convenient on cold or hot days, but it is extremely dangerous. A running engine produces carbon monoxide, a colorless and odorless gas that can accumulate quickly in spaces without ventilation. Every year, serious poisonings and even deaths are recorded due to irresponsible use of remote start in garages, and the danger isn't always immediate or obvious, because just a few minutes can be enough for carbon monoxide levels to become critical. No convenience justifies that risk, and this function only makes sense in completely open and ventilated spaces. Using it in closed garages is a bad idea from every possible perspective, and deactivating it by default is a basic safety decision rather than an exaggeration. If you turn off these functions, your car will be a little less intelligent, but you will be significantly more so, because technology is there to help you, not to think for you or put you at risk. Tell me in the comments which of these functions you turned off first or which has given you the most problems, and if this content helped you understand your car better, subscribe, leave a like, and share it with someone who trusts intelligent assistants a little too much without questioning them. Hit that like button and subscribe for more honest automotive insights based on actual data.